Alec Baldwin could not stop putting his head in his hands. It's not a good look, brother. The rest of the day, though, I gotta say, might have been more in his favor. Let's recap day 2. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore. We just watched day 2 of the trial. So happy to have It's Kim and Christopher Melcher here. How you both doing? Thank you, Kim. It was a long day, I know, with you. I've talked to you plenty, but look who's with us. Chris is here, live from New Mexico. How was your day? How was this trial for you? Day 2. Do you feel like either side got a little bit ahead or below? Who took the win, the defense or the prosecution overall?
Well, it's a technical day, as happens in trials, because the prosecutor has to prove all of this information and then kind of counteract what the defense theories are. So you end up with a lot of testimony like we had today that's more technical. But there were some points buried through in there that we'll go through. But there was also this ruling outside the presence of the jury, which allowed more evidence to be presented against Alec Baldwin. And those were his own words about how dangerous a gun could be. And I definitely want to talk about that. That was a win. The jury hasn't heard this yet, but that was definitely a win for the prosecutor.
So, yeah, that's interesting because I'm glad because I was going to ask you about that stuff because a lot of it was a little confusing to me. So there, Christopher did just reveal that. So points for the prosecution, but I want to go earlier on in the day as we recap. We're going to go through some of the stuff. It felt like the crime tech was getting murdered on the stand, Christopher. This was not a good look for her. She was getting very nervous. Here's a little clip that we watched. Here she is constantly looking at the jury, very nervous. And in fact, hold on, let me cut. There's one clip here I wanted to play for you all.
Samaritan turn in these 45 rounds into the precinct, right?
If that's what you're discussing.
Yeah. You don't know whether or not you have in your possession the live rounds that killed Miss Hutchins, do you?
The live round that killed Miss Hutchins has been fired. Are you asking me about a connection between those live rounds and other ones?
I'm asking you, as we've talked about at great length, whether or not you withdraw it. I'm asking you.
He's trying desperately, but then ultimately it seemed like she was very much sweating until prosecution came back.
Do you recall the Good Samaritan's name?
I do not.
They were painting this picture, Christopher, of a good Samaritan who came in and dropped all this information. And Kim and I were both buying it, hook, line, and sinker, like, oh no, it's all Alex clearly being screwed, and this was all an attack. But the prosecution came back very strong, hitting back, making it clear.
Would you recognize it if I said it to you?
Yes.
Troy Teskey.
Yes, that was his name.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey is a close friend of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's father?
No, I did not know that.
She then, shows a complete doubt as to why this good Samaritan came forward to save Hannah and her father's businesses. She then, badass move, went and pulled back the guy's board, which I did love this part. Used the board against him. And because there was a lot of aiming, Christopher, of just like, oh, there's a big bad guy, this Seth Kinney. You guys didn't do your job. You guys were all terrible. This was all poor planning, bad investigation. But she really went through and was like...
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for loading a live round into the gun?
No.
Has a person already been tried and convicted for those things?
Yes.
To try to clarify some points...
She really just sort of owned it. Kim, before we get to Chris's thoughts, anything to echo on that? It was pretty stunning to watch how she was able to pull it back, and both of us changed our mind, no?
Yeah, it was very convincing what the defense did, but I think the prosecution coming in with more context, obviously context is everything, and that's why it is so important to have. And they really did take back control after that.
So she got saved, but overall, what is your opinion there, Christopher, of that sort of back and forth between the crime tech seemingly, well, she wasn't doing a good job to the prosecution, reminding everybody that's not what this case is about. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that was overblown by the defense and a lost point by them because this crime tech's role is very limited. I mean, she's not the detective on the case. She's going to collect and process, document evidence. That's it. And Luke Nikas is kind of swaggering and accusatorial and saying, well, did you turn this over to the defense? And she's like, I don't turn anything over to the defense. I just document stuff. And it's the prosecutor that turns over stuff to the defense. So it shows like he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Second of all, it was like the clip you just played.
This is Alex. Wait, this isn't Luke. This is Alex. Just so I'm getting, you got him Luke. This is Alex Spiro, right? Just so I'm getting my lawyers correct.
Well, I think it's Luke is the younger guy and Alex is the older guy. I think.
Oh, I'm totally lost. These two look
But
the
yeah,
same.
I may mix them up, but I think that's
Anyway, yes.
But this gentleman with the yellow tie
was very
And-
aggressive.
Banana
Yellow
tie.
tie was very defensive. Yes.
So the other question, and you know, she smirked when this was asked, is like, well, you know, these bullets that the so-called Good Samaritan came in could have been we're the ones, or you don't know if that was the bullet that killed, Helena, and she's like, the bullet that killed Helena is not in this box that this guy dropped off 2 or 3 years later. It went into her, you idiot. So it was like he doesn't know. The other thing is that. He said, oh, you know, when you were at this meeting that you didn't disclose something. And she's like, I wasn't even at that meeting.
Thank you.
So the thing is that
Before, and I'm sorry,
Sorry, keep going.
you as the defense attorney and I'm not trying to be overly critical and stuff like that, but when you're cross-examining a witness, you need to know the facts as well, if not better than that witness to trap them.
Yep.
And here he's saying things and the witness is correcting him. So I didn't think that was good. The final point, which you're alluding to, is who cares where this bullet came from? I don't care if it was Eric Trump who came and put the bullet into the gun to set up
You
Alec
stop
Baldwin
imitating
for
my
making fun of
dad,
his dad. That is totally irrelevant because the basic and necessary safety check of seeing if the gun is loaded, which would have taken 10 seconds, would have revealed the live round. So all of this stuff mattered in the Hannah Gutierrez trial, but it doesn't matter here because this trial is the only question in this trial really, can you take somebody else's word that a gun is unloaded without checking it or having somebody check it for you, pointed at 2 people? That's it. Doesn't matter how the gun got loaded.
It does matter if we made sure we're getting the right people to take accountability, I will say, but you're 100% in this case, it doesn't matter. That's what I've been saying. This is about Alec Baldwin. So they did bring in finally, because they haven't really been doing much of this, Christopher, of getting to the meat of it, of exactly the point of should he be responsible. They did finally bring in the gun expert.
What I'm hearing you say, it sounds like the only way you can fire this gun is by pulling the trigger.
That's the way that should be done.
It's the way you
Is
shoot the
there
gun.
another way to fire this gun?
No.
Now they came in, defense came back and said, well, it wasn't in your possession for all these 5 years, so causing doubt. But this guy came in, he's the creator of the gun. They brought that in. I mean, that's really what this should be on. Are you surprised that they haven't gotten there quicker to this kind of evidence and these kind of witnesses, Christopher?
Well,
are they
we're
wasting
only
their
on
time?
day 2. We're only on day 2, and you know, you gotta, you know, it takes a bit. Again, this is irrelevant. What Alec Baldwin is saying, I didn't pull the trigger, and the implication, and he was, I would never point a gun at somebody and pull the trigger. The implication is that had the scene called for that, he would have checked the gun, and because the scene only called for him, you know, that he was practicing pointing the gun and cocking the hammer, that somehow that was okay not to check it. And it's a ridiculous statement. Again, it all depends whether you grew up with guns or have any gun training or not. But anyone who's had a sliver of gun training knows. First rule is treat that gun as unloaded until it has been demonstrated to be unloaded. He's not expected to know how to use this gun, but the expectation is somebody shows it to him, and again, 10 seconds. Here it is. See, Alec, these are dummies. And for him to imply that, if I would have known I needed to pull the trigger, I would have insisted. But since I'm only pointing it at them, and since I'm only cocking the hammer, that it was okay for me to take somebody else's word for it is a ridiculous statement and shows that he acted recklessly. The other thing, this ruling about the blanks, and I don't know if we want to hit that now or get it later, but it feeds into this point.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff that the defense is bringing up that it feels like the prosecution just has to respond to. This was the other guy, this sales expert who came in.
Exhibit 6, if it had displayed any defects in functionality,
basically this guy was a complete waste of time at my point. Came in, who's
why not?
the sales expert, and It's on sales
purpose
floor,
of
so there's no way it could have had
theater or
defects during this
EMF
time.
going to-
But it seems like they're just doing all this, Christopher, because clearly the defense is going to say, well, the gun wasn't in their hand. Of course, there could have been a problem. Is this not important for the prosecution to start, causing that doubt right away? Like, no, this gun was not faulty. It's not our fault the gun broke. The gun was working fine.
Yeah, it's super important because they broke the gun during the stupid testing. And so they bring in Pieta, whose family manufactured this gun and designed it, and saying, well, it's after a Colt, but, manufactured it, and saying, no, it really doesn't go off unless you pull the trigger. Again, a gun is a machine, and, you have to pull the trigger for it to go off. And so that's what he's saying, and that they have quality control. The rep who actually, sold or distributed the gun in the U.S., same thing. The most significant part of his testimony is that he has never heard a complaint of one of these guns going off without pulling the trigger. So I think that was the most significant thing. The problem, as you've mentioned, is that gun then left this gentleman's possession, was in the possession of the PDQ guy, and then in this Rust and Andy Gutierrez. And I think that the FBI crime report said that there was some indication of alteration of that weapon. So after it left the factory, after it left the sales rep, things may and probably seems like did happen to that gun, and then it certainly was tested and destroyed, or damaged. But so I think that's why they're bringing this stuff in. And again, to me, doesn't really make a difference because you don't point and again, this is a real gun, and I don't like the detective called it a prop. It's actually not a prop. It's a real gun being used on a movie set. Difference. But you don't point a gun at somebody unless you plan on shooting them. And if you don't plan on shooting them, then you got to make sure that the thing's unloaded. It's simple. And that applies to actors. Alec Baldwin's not a child. This guy is a very experienced actor who's used and played with guns on all these sets. This is common sense. But when you don't do it, you kill somebody like we've seen.
Dude, we're on the same page. Of course, this is where I stand, but the argument's going to come in, right? That the SAG union rules have come forward and said, well, he followed the rules. It's not the actor's responsibility. He was told it was a cold gun. These are the experts. That's where I'm waiting for that to come in. Why do you think the prosecution's not already starting to hit that? And when are we going to get to that meat of this case, you think?
Yeah, so it's actually not under SAG. It's a safety bulletin that says, there are certain requirements that are done every time a gun is used on set. Again, common sense rules. And what it says is that every time a gun is handed to the actor, it shall be shown to the actor that it's unloaded and that any dummy rounds in there are in fact dummies. And so, if we're going to go with what the rules say, it says that has to be performed every single time. There is nowhere in those safety bulletin that says, or you can just promise to somebody that it's unloaded. That is not part of the safety guidelines because that would just be idiotic for somebody to take somebody else's word for it. And that's where I'm going. The other thing, and we're going to probably hear about from the gun safety experts, and that the defense will say is, in the 100 years of filmmaking, this is the only time somebody's been killed with a live round. Brandon Lee wasn't killed with a live round. We can talk about that. This was the only time on a movie set in over 100 years. And they're going to show that to try to show that this was some act of God, was some aberration. No, that shows that there's only been one person in the last 100 years that has been so stupid to handle a firearm without checking it, and certainly Andy Gutierrez-Reed just having live rounds just scattered around. In the history of 100 years, there have only been people that dumb that this has occurred. So to me, that shows a wide deviation, a gross departure from safety standards. And again, this is how long it takes to show, Alec, it's unloaded. Do you see this?
Yeah. And I want to reiterate because Kat was one of the comments to single out. Oh, come on. So John Wick never points his gun in the movies? Of course he does. But when he does, and I've seen it, I've worked with the 1187 studio that does it. When he does a scene like that, the whole set stops. Everybody, we have a firearm on the set. Here are the blanks. They open it up. They show everybody. They let you know. The safety protocols on those movies with the stuntmen, the performers is insane, guys. There's a level that's high because, as Christopher said, that's why it doesn't happen, because they check it every single time. No one can risk it. And the fact that there was something in here shows how lax they were on the safety protocols. And that's where I agree 100% that Alec needs to take responsibility. But everybody's a movie expert now and thinks they know how it all works. And they're ignoring that fact because Alec and his defense have put a pretty good job. The last person who came in was this deputy corporal who was detective. Really nothing came out of this except for her sort of confirming they're trying to just nip this in the bud. Seth Kenney's not the bad guy. This is a deflection, yada, yada, yada. Hannah is the victim, is the villain. We already got her. That's what they're doing here. We cut this short. We didn't really go there. Rather than even talk about that, because I don't think much is there, my next question is, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed is now being talked about as being the guest tomorrow. This is crazy. Now they're saying she doesn't want to testify. She doesn't want to persist, do it.
Cooperate.
Christopher, sorry, thank you. Christopher, can they make her come testify tomorrow?
I just first, Andy, I love that you call these people guests. In court we call them witnesses.
It's a show.
I love that.
It's like them calling the gun a prop. We're all following these exactly. It's sweeps. We're bringing in Hannah. Go ahead.
But it's same thing. Okay, so here's what's happened. The court's already ruled on part of this. They can transport her body from prison into the courtroom and sit her in the witness seat. And but there has already been a ruling by the court that she cannot be compelled to answer questions that would tend to incriminate her. Okay, so here's how this went down. So this was about a week or two ago. The prosecutor offered her what's called use immunity. And what use immunity says is that, hey, we're going to ask you questions, but none of your answers can be used against you in any proceedings. It's an absolute free zone here. And she said, nope. I am appealing my ruling. And if I win my appeal, I'm going to get a retrial. And I don't want to say anything that might tend to incriminate me or help you in a reprosecution of me. And so that was taken to the judge. And the judge said, because of the pending appeal, she cannot be forced to answer any questions that would tend to incriminate her. There's no way she's going to want to sit here and waive her rights to help Alec Baldwin. So she's going to take the fifth on anything that might tend to incriminate her. And pretty much after state your name, I don't know what else they could ask her that wouldn't incriminate her. Anything about her background, her experience, what she did, what she said, what she didn't do. It would all tend to incriminate her. So we'll see. We'll see what they're going to get, but it's probably going to be a whole bunch of nothing is my guess.
But again, that probably doesn't look good in the eyes of the jury. Or do you think there's a part of it that maybe they're hoping for that? Because look, their guests show it is kind of what's happening, right? A court trial is a show for the jury of getting their narrative and their story across. Do you think they want her to be there to plead the fifth, to look like the bad guy?
So, and I don't know what exactly the rule is in New Mexico, but the general standard is that you cannot bring, it is improper to bring in a witness basically to display their invocation of their constitutional rights to remain silent. And if that's the purpose of the inquiry, and if that's manifestly what's going to happen with all these questions, it's improper. So generally, they're going to have to show an offer of proof and saying, hey, judge, here are areas of inquiry that would not tend to incriminate her, and there would clearly be a safe zone, and they go there, and then they would be expected not to ask any questions that might tend to incriminate her. But I got to imagine we're going to see a lot of breaks and sidebars and objections over that. And knowing that she can't be compelled to answer any questions that might incriminate her, I do wonder what they expect to really get from her. They may, like I say, as they show, they may want to just demonstrate. One thing is they bring her in and show this is the person that Alec Baldwin relied upon.
Yes.
Just put eyes on this person. Would you take this person's word that the gun is unloaded, or even David Hall's, and point this gun at somebody else? Again, my litmus test, and I hope somehow they get to use this. Alec, if the scene called for you to put the gun to your head and pull the trigger, would you have checked or make sure that somebody checked?
Well, not even that. Can they say, would you have put this gun to your own wife and kids? Like, can you say that?
Yeah. I mean, it's argumentative, and, he may not be forced to answer it, but the jury would think about that. And I got to think about it. If that's what's on the line, and if he's answering that truthfully, there's no way. And anyone here that's doubting this, oh, it's a movie. They can't afford to take 10 seconds to check a gun because this is a movie and Alec Baldwin's important. If his life was on the line, or even better, you say his wife or kids' line, I guarantee that he was going to check that gun. He's not going to say, "Oh, it's unloaded. Let me just go and point it at somebody else that I care about more."
I mean, that's again, to me that is the smoking gun of the case. If they get him on the stand and they don't go there, I would be shocked. But yeah, it sounds like Hannah's a waste. Kim, anything to ask for Christopher? I didn't mean to take over there, but anything you want to add from the show today, the show, as now I'm going to call it, the trial?
I think I was curious as to, there's been a massive amount of time that was spent with the crime scene
tech
this morning and this morning and then yesterday as well. I understand we need to lay a foundation of what happened here and where there was negligence and all of those types of things. But the difficulty I have is I feel like a lot of what we have seen, none of it points to the specifics of what Alec has done. How much longer do you think it's going to take for the prosecution to start moving more in that direction? Because it's just kind of, I understand that we need to lay the foundation, but to me, it feels like when we have such a short amount of time in a trial, that was a lot of, in some ways, wasted time. I'd be interested to know your
yeah, and they have to let defense have the equal time, right? I imagine the judge is keeping a clock.
Yeah, I don't know how they've allocated it, but certainly they're saying, hey, we're ending this thing on Friday. Now, Kim, you raise a great point, and this is the thing is we struggle with as trial attorneys, and especially in criminal cases. Most of the time, you're going to see a prosecutor go in chronological order. It is the easiest way to tell a story. There's no risk of confusing the jury because it's once upon a time there was a movie and blah blah blah, and you just start from the beginning. So that's kind of what they're doing. Their chrono started at the 911 call. Basically, okay, we have a call for service out here for this accidental shooting and the chaotic scene. And then they're going to the crime scene tech. So yes, it's building up. I think ultimately the evidence about Alec's responsibility, there's not a whole lot of direct evidence on that point other than his statements. And that's what we're going to be talking about in a bit. The statements that he made in the interview to the police and to the media, that shows his state of mind and awareness of gun safety issues. So that'll come in. But ultimately, there's not a whole lot of factual disputes here. It's that he was handed a gun. He didn't check. No one checked it for him. He pointed it. He cocked it. There's a question of whether he pulled the trigger, but it went off and we know what happened. And so like I keep going back to, the simplicity of the case was it reasonable for him to accept somebody's word that it's loaded? That really, it's the whole case, just in that one question.
Which would make sense why there's not as much time for both people. So it's interesting, but it does feel like prosecution's going to run out of time soon. And I don't feel like they've brought in any of those clips and things that Alec has said. We're going to see that, don't you think? You think they'll play clips from George Stephanopoulos' interview compared to his interrogation interviews? Will we see that soon?
Yeah, I mean, eventually. And those are statements that he's made, outside of court. And so there's a hearsay exception for a party opponent that makes admissions. And so in that ruling, okay, so there was this big break, outside the jury, and there were some fights about some evidence. And one of the issues that were coming up is the prosecutor wants to use a statement that Alec Baldwin made. I think it was to investigators shortly after the incident, where he was just talking about his awareness of guns and gun safety and the danger involved. And he said that, look, I know that a blank can cause damage. It can burn somebody. It could hurt somebody. It could potentially kill somebody. And the defense tried to keep it out. The judge is letting it in. The reason why I call this significant is here's why. There's no way that Alec Baldwin, I think, would have ever expected there's a live round on that set. I give him that. That is maddening, asinine, unbelievable that there would be a live round on that set, and there's no way that Alec would have thought that. But he did know there were blanks because he is shown firing the gun with blanks. And now he's saying, hey, I know blanks could kill. Well, he's now being handed a gun that he's previously used to fire blanks on this very set. And how does he know that there's not blanks in there? And literally, this chapel, they're all jammed up really tight. There's that Helena and Joel are right in front of him when he's pointing this gun in the practice. We've also heard, and this hasn't come in yet, that, and I don't know how this is going to come out, but there were crew members who walked from the set for safety reasons. And one of the guys that walked from the set took the monitor. And that monitor is attached to the dolly where the camera sits, and it's usually this monitor right here. And it would show to the actor what's going on. And there would be another monitor for the director to preview. And so that monitor now is gone. So now we have, instead of them looking away remotely at this monitor, we now have Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza right in the line of fire. Now Alec Baldwin's pointing this gun right at them. That, by the way, should have never happened also in the safety bulletin. You can point a gun at a camera. You could point, they have all different kinds of ways to make it look like you're even pointing the gun at the camera. You would never, ever, ever point it at another person. But he did.
This wasn't a rubber prop like they keep trying to say. This was an actual firearm, a real one, as we learned. This was a real weapon, and they were using it as a prop, but it's not a prop. And defense has been saying prop over and over again to try to set that in, and it's smart on their part, to be honest. He's an actor. It's a prop. That's the language that they've been using throughout this whole trial. And yeah, I wish the prosecution would continue to reiterate the gun, the deadly weapon. They need to do the opposite of it, because it's clear what they're trying to do here. Yeah, look, it's all well said. I think we're getting to that point where it's getting interesting. It's taking a while to get there for sure, but I'm hoping we're going to get to some of those clips. And that's a huge bombshell there, to know that we do get to finally hear him talk about what he knows. That's the problem, right? When they eliminated the producer role, it seemed like that was gone, but I saw her today fighting with the judge, trying to get more of that in, saying, well, look, this is important. I have people who are going to say he knew this, he knew that. There's a reason why this was connected. Is there still a shot that the judge is going to deem that some of this stuff that maybe they thought they got rid of because he can't be tried as a producer could still eke its way in, Chris?
I don't see this judge changing her mind unless Alec's defense team opens the door. And they came really close to that in their opening statements. And also in something else that was happening yesterday, they're saying, and I think it was an opening, they were saying, hey, Alec just showed up on the set like 2 days earlier. He's just an actor. He's just showing up. He didn't really know what's going on. And so if they keep laying into things like that, diminishing his role, then I would imagine the prosecutor's going to come back and say, hey, they've opened the door. Because the danger of that ruling, or the risk to the prosecutor of that ruling, eliminating the producer role, is that Alec's going to say, hey, I'm just an actor. I don't call the shots here. That safety bulletin, and that's what came back up again today. Right at the beginning of that safety bulletin, it says the producer is ultimately responsible for safety on the set. And they delegate down to the prop master, and the prop master delegates down to the armorer. David Hall's first assistant director has no business touching that gun. They keep saying he's in charge of safety. No, he wasn't, at least not with respect to that gun. He's not in the chain of command. He's not allowed to touch it. The producer's responsible. He was a producer. And again, the more that they try and diminish his role and just saying, hey, I'm just an actor. I just showed up to what I was told. I'm hoping they'll maybe get another bite at it. But again, this judge is running a tight ship and doesn't seem to really want to change her rulings on things.
She doesn't seem to want to do anything, right, Kim? It seems like she's ready to get the hell out of there. Any final thoughts from you as we wrap up? Kim?
I think today we definitely are seeing more of what the prosecution is trying to do. We are seeing a bit of pushback from the defense, which I think is good. And I think tomorrow, depending on how Hannah goes, it could be a very interesting day.
Anything else from you, Chris?
No, I think just, this will build, but it will also be done quick enough. And so very difficult. I saw the poll that you ran, earlier, and I don't know if you want to put those poll results up if you have them, but I thought it was very cool that you're, checking with all of us here, because all of us are watching this and have done other trials and see, but there was, it was
50-50, like throughout all of this. They've been going straight down. Right now, 56% believe defense won, 44% believe prosecution won day two. It's been fascinating to watch how split the audience is on this. I haven't seen one this stuck in the middle. It could go either way.
Well, and it's not a great sign, that the defense is got the edge under this poll, because this is the prosecution's case. This is the time that they're supposed to be winning. And so that's not a great sign. But again, we haven't heard, we've only heard a sliver. We only heard 2 days at testimony so far.
We got a lot more. We'll be here. Kim will be starting the show tomorrow. I hope to see Chris again. I'll be traveling, but I'll be not in studio, but we'll be doing this. I believe in you, Kim. You got this. Hit that subscribe. Stay tuned. It's going to be interesting. We'll see if Hannah shows up. A lot could happen. Will you just show up and plead the fifth? Who knows? Either way, make sure you follow Christopher over on Twitter at @CI_divorce. And it's Kim on YouTube. Thank you guys. It's been another 8 hours. What a day. We got so much more coming for you. It's not over yet. So thank you guys who have been watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit that bell for all alerts so you get notified when we're live. Smash the thumbs up right now before you get out of here and leave your comments down below. Appreciate all you guys so much. How you say, see you tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you all. Thanks again.